Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Green Flag. I'm your host, Lukas Wacker, and with me, as always, we have Kyle Cushman, and we are back for another midweek edition of the show, and lots of news and notes over the past couple of days, Kyle, since we recorded on Monday. Silly season musical chairs is basically in full effect now, and we've also got the Bristol fantasy preview for the NASCAR Cup Series upcoming this weekend on Saturday night. So lots to talk about, but first off, how are you doing today, Kyle, before we get into the swing of things? How you been over the last couple of days?
Yeah, it's been good. Definitely not the crazy news that we got last week, but definitely the quantity is still there. Lots of moving around, as you mentioned, the musical chairs of silly season really getting into the swing of things here. But it's another busy weekend. Of course, Bristol night race is always a special weekend in NASCAR. I'm excited for this fantasy preview, I'm not going to lie. But then, of course, we've got Le Mans as well, 24 hours, and I'm excited to talk a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, lots of stuff to talk about. Like Kyle said, not too many major names are off the board, or anybody is really off the board right now. It's all about people kind of just saying that they're leaving their current teams. And that starts off with Daniel Suarez, the guy who's been on the move for 3 consecutive seasons, is going to continue that. He's leaving Gaunt Brothers Racing, as it has been confirmed by himself and the team. And another unfortunate break here for Suarez. Obviously, we expect him to be in a more competitive equipment than what he's in currently. This is just a sign that maybe he has something lined up for next season, but who knows? I mean, there's a lot of different rumors swirling about which driver could go to which team and what team could maybe even get a technical alliance, which we'll talk about in a second. But your initial thoughts here, Kyle, as Daniel Suarez is once again on the move and looking for a new team in 2021.
Yeah, I'm not all that surprised that the Gaunt Brothers thing was a one-year kind of short-lived relationship there. I would have been a little bit surprised if it went past this season, just given Daniel Suarez, the caliber of driver he is and the quality of team that 96 is. Like, they don't even have a charter. That's really all you need to know in terms of the equipment there. But that's a team that punches above their weight. They're consistently in that 30th place, best of those back markers, and that's what Daniel Suarez has brought to that team. So I'm not all that surprised that it was one and done. But the surprising thing to me is kind of how Daniel Suarez went about his video announcing that he was leaving the team. And it kind of gave me the impression that it was Gaunt Brothers ending the relationship rather than Daniel Suarez ending the relationship as he's found new opportunity. It really does seem like this is another scenario where Suarez doesn't have something lined up immediately. This isn't him about to announce an extension a signing with a new team. This is him being left by another team. And as we'll talk about in a couple minutes here with the Gaunt Brothers rumors and everything going on with Toyota and not having that kind of satellite team going into next season and what's going to happen there, it seems like those rumors may be lining up and leaning towards something bigger happening with Gaunt Brothers, which once again has left Daniel Suarez on the outside looking in of another situation. And whether you look at his career and being thrust into the 19 car prematurely because of Carl Edwards' surprising retirement, the struggles there, and then going over to Stuart Haas, and then, of course, losing that ride because they have their top prospect coming up in Cole Custer, and being left in basically silly season, no man's land, landing at the 96 team. And then of all the things that happened this year, the Toyota Alliance team goes down the drain again, and then all of a sudden it seems like the 96 is the next team to step up there, and Suarez is out of that again. So it's been a rough go for him in the Cup Series, both on track and kind of on the business side as well. But this definitely didn't seem like something that was Suarez's choosing. It really seemed like it's a Gaunt Brothers initiative.
Yeah, I think this has arguably been his best season with the equipment that he has in the Cup Series so far. I mean, obviously with the
Most
2 years at Gibbs.
Sure.
Yeah, at Gibbs, I mean, you know, after the first season, we kind of expected him to be a little bit lackluster. And, you know, after winning an Xfinity championship and expected to be returning to that, you'd think that it would be a bit rusty going into a Cup Series and being thrown into the deep end, I guess. And then the second season, he didn't quite get that performance. And then you've got Martin Truex Jr., who, you know, has to come over. They have to make room for him because of Furniture Row closing down. So then you look at Suarez as being the guy that has to come out because they didn't want to lose Eric Jones at that period of time. But now he's gone and Suarez is gone. It's a totally new, fresh faces at JGR. And same with SHR with Cole Custer coming in there. You can't blame SHR for wanting to put Cole Custer in that car. I mean, it's been an incredible Rookie of the Year battle. But, you know, you got to feel for Suarez. a tough break. Like, he just can't go to the right teams. It's like he's picking the wrong teams to go to each year, and he's getting the short end of the stick. So on those rumors that Kyle was talking about a little bit, as we said last week, Darrell Wallace Jr. will not be returning to Richard Petty Motorsports. And there's been some speculation, a little bit of talk that maybe Gaunt Brothers is the destination for Bubba Wallace. We kind of maybe thought Chip Ganassi or maybe even Hendrick was a spot for him, staying in the Chevy camp and just moving up in terms of equipment. But this is a totally different field of play that we didn't see coming here with Darrell Wallace Jr. Looking for a ride at Gaunt Brothers per se, and then JGR bringing the technical alliance over to Gaunt Brothers to try and lift that organization up in terms of performance there. So, Denny Hamlin, those rumors are still swirling around what he's going to do. There's been talk about him investing in a team, and who knows where that could be. I mean, you look at that 13 car and Bob Germain as well as an option for him to invest in a team if they are looking to sell. So lots of different things around those two people, around Denny Hamlin and Bubba Wallace. If there's something that could happen between those two, if something can materialize in terms of a combination of giving him a ride and giving JGR another outlet in terms of performance, and maybe putting a prospect down the line in that car. But Kyle, if this were to happen with Bubba Wallace, would you be like, I mean, this is basically a shock to everybody that he would, technically go down in terms of equipment. I mean, it seems like a total downgrade right now. What are your initial thoughts here on that?
Yeah, as soon as the Levine Family Racing news came down that they were selling and that it was going to Spire, of course, being a Chevy team, having that relationship with Hendrick Motorsports primarily, we knew that all of a sudden that there was only going to be 4 Toyotas on the grid, plus the 5th one there in the 96. And we kind of talked about, okay, what if the 96 kind of gets that next bump up and blah, 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 whatever. But then we never heard any actual kind of rumors or speculation or even talks about that coming to fruition. And now all of a sudden it seems like it's almost a done deal the way some people are talking about it. If that is the case, and if it's a TRD-backed endeavor and they get a charter and all these kind of things, and the quote that really stood out to me from the Pockrass stuff when he reported it was Furniture Row Racing level investment in the team.
Yeah.
If that is the case, and that's legitimately what's going to be happening with the 96, I think you'd be hard-pressed to argue against Bubba Wallace going to that 96, because we've seen what they've been able to do, a TRD-backed team outside of Joe Gibbs in the past with Furniture Row. And if we're talking about a similar kind of scenario here with the 96 going forward, I really don't see why you wouldn't choose that going forward. Obviously, it's a huge risk. But if you're Bubba Wallace, you're looking to maximize this opportunity. And if you're hearing Furniture Row levels of investment and quality of equipment, I don't see why you wouldn't take that gamble.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it makes sense, but for Bubba Wallace, it's kind of going back to his roots. He came up through the Toyota stable at KBM, and then moved on to Roush in the 6 car in their Xfinity Series program, and then kind of got left out to dry with that in terms of sponsorship and then all that. And then he ended up taking over for Eric Almirola when he had his back injury, and then got it to Richard Petty Motorsports. And it's been that way basically ever since for him. So, I mean, Bubba Wallace has had quite the turn of events in terms of manufacturers and teams and every sort of alliance. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes back to something that he's familiar with, I guess, in terms of Toyota. It would be quite the risk, I'd say, in terms of, the leverage that he has right now in terms of a proven ride. And Ganassi, or if Hendrick had even offered him something, you would think that maybe he would look at that as more of a stable option down the line. But if you're in kind of a mode where Furniture Row level equipment is returning to the sport, and Bubba Wallace can be that guy at that team, single car organization, and he's their guy, how could you say no to that? It's going to be quite the turn of events here in terms of what we thought last week. It's just goes to show you that anything can happen in just a week, maybe even a couple of days in motorsports in terms of news. But I'm curious to see what happens here with Bubba Wallace. So, Kyle, any kind of little tidbits or final thoughts here on that kind of subject? Because it is big news if the 42 and the 48 stay open, and Bubba Wallace goes to an entirely different thing we saw off the board.
Yeah, the big factor for me, of course, in addition to Bubba Wallace and the decision he makes, is also the Denny Hamlin ownership wildcard, and whether that's him and anybody else investing in Gaunt Brothers, or if Gaunt Brothers is a TRD-backed thing and it's Hamlin and investors going in and getting their own charter and starting their own team with TRD backing. Because we've known for a while, you look at the Toyota pipeline, and they've got the biggest prospect pool in stock car racing, and they've only got 4 competitive cars to put them all into at the top level, and they're all basically taken up by veterans with the exception of 1 seat. So you look at it for forever, and it's always been Toyota trying to find some extra trying to find some extra teams to go and put their drivers in. And whether you look at that one season where Fernando Trudeau went to 2 cars and Eric Jones was in the 77 for that one season, and then what else happened down the road, I wouldn't be surprised if Toyota is looking at the 96 and they're like, okay, we want to do that. But if we can also get Hamlin in there and get their own team there, they would not miss the opportunity to add a couple more competitive cars, because you look down the pipeline and there's some legitimate talents coming up that you don't want to spend all that money on developing, bringing them up through the system just for them, once they reach that cup level, to switch over a manufacturer because an opportunity comes up sooner. And they avoided that, luckily, with Christopher Bell, but I don't know if they'll be so lucky if you look down the pipeline, and the same things will happen with Harrison Burton, Christian Eckes, or even down the road in the future, Chandler Smith. Those are 3 more pretty high-level talents, especially Chandler Smith there coming a few years down the road. And really, you don't have all that many seats to fill them with. And if you can add a couple more competitive teams, I think they'll do that in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I think this is the year, because there's been a couple of sales, and you don't usually see that on
there's charters available, which we don't see very often.
So you've got, I think if you're Denny Hamlin, you look at that 13 car a bit more, and, maybe there's something with Eric Jones in there too. They feel compelled to maybe keep him in the Toyota camp, and if Hamlin tries to buy something to try and bail him out a little bit.
Is he goes to a Hamlin team, and then Eric Jones, because he hasn't announced anything yet, he ends up in a TRD backed 96 car, something like that. I really wouldn't be surprised if we see a 23 Denny Hamlin car on the grid next year, with maybe a little bit of Jordan sponsorship mixed in there as well, with Bubba Wallace in there, and then Eric Jones still remains in Toyota there with the 96 or something. There's so many crazy rumors and different scenarios that can play out here, and it's just kind of waiting for that one big shoe to drop, the Bubba Wallace announcement, and then it's just kind of the floodgates open and all the announcements start to come in.
Yeah, there's, it's kind of just waiting for that one bomb to drop, and then kind of everything else will go into place. But we're still waiting. I mean, we're kind of getting later and later here into silly season. Obviously not as late as Cole Custer being replacing Daniel Suarez last season, but we're getting close to the end of the season here. A couple of weeks left, around 2.5 months, even less than that. I mean, we're running out of time in terms of people trying to get some security here for 2021 in a season that is still, up for grabs in terms of, the unpredictability. So lots of different things. I think that's the key one is, we knew Daniel Suarez was going to leave. We'll see where that ends up. The 43 cars open. That could be, that next place for him. I know we texted about that a little bit off camera or off the show, but Suarez has definitely got some options here in terms of upgrading his equipment from this season. But the thing is, if that 96 goes up in performance to, a playoff contending team, you have to feel for Suarez once again. Like he just got the raw end of the stick, and he's looking for a competitive ride and have to work his way up. I mean, he's not getting any younger. He's kind of getting into his mid-20s, kind of later 20s to an extent there for Suarez. So he's going to want to find some security and the top level of ride and try and maintain that sooner rather than later. But interesting storylines there for those two in terms of Bubba Wallace and Daniel Suarez as we go deeper into silly season. So I think we move on here, Kyle, to Junior Motorsports and announcing kind of their future plans with some young talent in Sam Mayer. He's going to be driving for the team in the second half of 2021. I think probably in the 8 car, that would make the most sense with their 4th car that they run on a consistent basis, but they have many drivers filling that spot. But Sam Mayer being turning 18 next June, he's going to take over that ride for the latter half of the season, and that's promising. And then he's going to go full-time at Junior Motorsports in 2022. So interesting stuff there. I thought Zane Smith might be that guy to get that nod. I'm not saying that he hasn't gotten that chance yet, but Sam Mayer looking like the future of junior motorsports. And you don't usually see this much, Kyle, in terms of teams locking a driver up 2 years down the line when they kind of have just kind of emerged on the scene in motorsports.
Yeah, well, most drivers aren't Sam Mayer. I mean, this guy is, I don't know if this is a hot take, but the highest potential prospect outside of the Cup Series right now.
Really?
Probably right there alongside Chandler Smith. I think those two are neck and neck for that title right now. Those two are the top prospects, and you look at the pipelines, you've got one in Chevy and one in Toyota. Sam Mayer has been incredible these last couple of seasons. Of course, a couple years ago now, he was a junior motorsports late model driver, returning to the organization now for the Xfinity Series. He has been superb in ARCA Menards East and the main series, especially on those short tracks. He's been dominant at Toledo specifically. He's won all 3 races in the main series there this season. He's looked incredible there this year. And even in the truck series, when he's got spot starts with GMS, he's looked very, very solid. He almost went out and won at Gateway. If that race stays green, he wins that race, just gets an unlucky caution, has a bad restart, not used to the trucks and the restarts there. Still comes away with a top 5 performance in a race that Chandler Smith was in as well and was basically silent. But Sam Mayer this year has been super, super impressive for me. He's really taken that next step to become that true A-plus level prospect for me. And I'm excited to see him go straight into the Xfinity program there with Junior Motorsports. And I'm really excited to see what he can do there, because we've seen for most of these top prospects over the years, it's been one full season in truck, move up, one full season in Xfinity, and then see where you're at after that. And I'm excited to see him do the half season in Xfinity next year when he becomes full-time eligible. As you mentioned there, with his June birth date in the summer, run the second half of the season, get that experience, and then go out in 2022 and go and try to win a championship and move up to the Cup Series probably after that if he can have a good season. So I'm excited to see how this plays out. But I got to say, I love the move. I'm a little bit sad because we probably aren't going to be able to see that Sam Mayer, Chandler Smith head-to-head battle next season. We might have to wait for 2022 to see that over the full course of a full season. But I'm loving that Junior Motorsports has hopped on it already, has announced it, and are locking them up long-term.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite the risk here in terms of just kind of negating the Truck Series level entirely, not doing a full-time season there and going right into the Xfinity Series for him. You wonder if that can maybe hurt his development in some regard, but with the talent that he's shown, I don't disagree that he's a great prospect. I don't know if I put him up there with like Chandler Smith. I think Ty Gibbs is going to be something incredible as well. I think those two are destined for greatness with their links in terms of the sport and the pipeline that they're projecting to go up into. But Sam Mayer is definitely in that Chevrolet side of things, looking like the next guy. Hendrick has got to keep their eye on him for sure with that Junior Motorsports pipeline. I mean, you look at, maybe we discussed this as well before the show, Alex Bowman, maybe he's in a bit of trouble here down the line if he's still at Hendrick by the time Sam Mayer is up through the ranks, and maybe he could be that next guy at the 88 car, whatever number Bowman is driving at that period of time. But that's a long ways down the road. That's like 3-4 years, maybe.
Minimum.
But it's going to be interesting to see the prospect pool come along, because you've seen big names make their way to the Cup Series progressively fast. And you wonder if Sam Mayer is the next person to add himself to that list. So interesting to see how that develops. I think we can move on here, Kyle, to the Truck Series. Renaming themselves back to the Camping World Truck Series, as it should be. If they want to keep going, they could go back to Craftsman, the best name that they've ever had for the Truck Series. But Camping World is solid to go back to. Thankfully, they're getting rid of Gander RV and Outdoors Truck Series name. Too much. The abbreviation in terms of letters on that is ridiculous. And I'm happy that they're going back to Camping World, because it's something that, rolls off the tongue a little bit easier, and it's easier to say. So, and it looks good on the sport too, that they're going back a little bit in time. And, the camper, I forget his name. I'm blanking here.
Marcus Lemonis?
Yeah. He's looking at the Truck Series, maybe improving their advertising or something along those lines with NASCAR, so that because they think the Truck Series is the most entertaining series. And to my right now, the Truck Series race is currently on, and they're doing a pretty good job around Bristol right now. So it's a very entertaining series, especially this season with the amount
definitely
of
has the
trucks.
most parity across all the competitive trucks. Any given week, any of those top 10, 12, you could probably even extend that to 15 trucks can all go out and win.
Yeah, and I like the move by NASCAR here to go back
Just
to Camping
simplifies
World.
the name.
It's nice.
It's too long right now. Going back to Camping World, it works.
Yeah, not too much on that, but I'm glad that they're going back. Another rename change or whatever you want to do with it. It just seems like they always constantly are changing that name, but hopefully Camping World is here to stay for the long run, and they can just kind of keep going with just these 3 series names with the NASCAR Cup Series, Xfinity Series, and the Camping World Truck Series for a long period of time here to not try and get any more confusion with amongst fans. So moving on from that, we'll stay in the Truck Series, though, for next week's race at Las Vegas. We have 2 names that have kind of come out of nowhere once again. One guy that we talked about in the show a couple of weeks ago in Travis Pastrana returning to the Truck Series and Nice Motorsports equipment. Obviously had a rough debut at Kansas, but the other guy, Conor Daly, the IndyCar driver himself, is coming over to the NASCAR Truck Series on a one-off race, driving for Nice as well. So those 2 will be in tandem. Remember, Nice has, had incredible performance last season with Ross Chastain in it. Obviously, have had a little bit of a downgrade in terms of performance with the GMS Alliance kind of being canceled there. But Travis Pastrana making another return to NASCAR, and Conor Daly, I think, making his first NASCAR appearance in his career. So kind of news that came out of nowhere here, Kyle.
Yeah, out of nowhere. Travis Pastrana, sure, we could have seen that again some point here in the near future, but Conor Daly making his NASCAR debut in the Truck Series with Nice Motorsports on an oval? What the hell is going on? We've heard time and time again where Conor Daly has almost gotten rides in NASCAR with different level of equipment on road courses primarily, but to make the debut at an oval when it's a season with no practice and all this kind of stuff, it's kind of crazy to think about, but I'm very excited to see how it plays out. Obviously, Nice, as you mentioned, has had a tough season not having that GMS Alliance this year. Ross Chastain has still had some pretty solid runs when he's been in that equipment, but everybody else has kind of struggled this season, whether that's Trevor Bayne now in the car, or Ty Majeski all season long, or Natalie Decker.
Who knows?
Anyone and everyone that's been in that kind of Nice stable outside of Ross Chastain has had a rough go of things, but hopefully we can see some improvement from Travis Pastrana from his first couple races back, and hopefully we can see Conor Daly do some good things, because it is pretty cool to see drivers go between IndyCar and NASCAR. Usually it's NASCAR to IndyCar that we've seen, primarily with the Indy 500. You think back to Kurt Busch when he did it. It's less
Jimmy
so
Johnson next season.
Of course, Jimmy Johnson next season. We haven't really seen the IndyCar to NASCAR thing in quite a while, since kind of the phase of all the IndyCar guys coming over to NASCAR in those kind of late 2000s there. But it'll be exciting to see how Conor Daly does.
Yeah, I hope Travis Pastrana also gets a second shot here and does well. And 2 names that are going to be interesting to keep your eye on at Vegas. I don't think they'll go out there and win or anything, but if they can come away with the top 15, I think is probably the target for them. That's a good night for either of those guys in their debut. I wonder how the difference in IndyCar to Truck Series will be for Conor Daly. It's going to be with no practice, especially. I mean,
just jumping into things. It's going to be fun.
Go for it, Conor Daly. I mean, you got nothing to lose. It's a one-off race. Obviously, Nice is kind of given up on their season. They have nothing really to race for. They're just out there to make laps. But if you're going to do it in style. And these 2 obviously have done that quite a bit in their careers. So going to be fun to watch the truck race next weekend at Las Vegas with those 2 in the race. We move on back to the Cup Series here with Matt DiBenedetto. Just a quick news on him. The deadline for his team and Wood Brothers to re-up his contract, and Team Penske to re-up his contract for next season, is the end of September. And I'm looking at the calendar. They're getting close to that deadline. About 2 weeks away here before Matt DiBenedetto could be on the outs. I mean, we didn't really see this one coming at all. DiBenedetto has done a tremendous job in that car this season, proving that when he gets into competitive equipment that he is competitive. And obviously over the past month and a half or so, things have gone down in performance a bit. But before that, he was exceptional in the top 12 in points basically the whole season. Obviously, the playoffs, the first two races haven't gone his way either, but this is going to be maybe a crucial weekend for Matt DiBenedetto here at Bristol with the success that he's had in the past here, and obviously to try and make it onto the next round in the playoffs. He's going to have to go out there and potentially win this weekend, and what a story that would be. I think that you basically get on the phone with Roger Penske in victory lane and say, I'm ready to be back here next season. Let's sign the deal. But it's up for grabs. They just need to offer it to him, and I'm sure he'd sign it right away because he'd run out of options here pretty quickly if he's not back at Wood Brothers in 2021, Kyle.
Yeah, I'd still be a little surprised if he doesn't return on that option. Everything that we've heard from DiBenedetto, he wants to stay there. From the Wood Brothers, they really like him and they want him to stay long-term there. But the key factor is the Penske alliance, and at the end of the day, it really comes down to what Penske says. And if Penske wants Austin Cindric to make that jump up to Cup, they're not going to be doing it in any of their three cars that are locked up for next year. It'll be in that 21 car. And given Cindric and his kind of second half surge this season, it's not really out of the question that he could make the jump up to Cup, and you'd kind of be hard-pressed to argue against it. Of course, he had that kind of crazy stretch on the ovals, but has kind of settled back down a little bit. But I'd still be a little surprised if he doesn't return. Obviously, Roger Penske has a lot on his plate these days with owning IndyCar and having multiple cars in multiple series across multiple continents. He does a lot of motorsport stuff. And it's basically, okay, what deadline is up next? Okay, let's cross that off and then just kind of truck it along with that. I really don't think the DiBenedetto stuff is at the forefront of his mind. And that being said, as this kind of starts to approach here, I think that they get things done and DiBenedetto returns to that 21 car for next season. I'd be pretty surprised if he's not back in the 21 next year.
But imagine if he isn't. I mean,
if he isn't, that's another free agent to throw out there. And solid. He showed this year. It wasn't the level of Ryan Blaney a few years ago, but it was a significant upgrade over what Paul Menard had done the last couple of years. And if their performance hadn't dipped over these past few weeks, they would have been locked in easily into the playoffs. Their performance has dipped recently, so maybe that affects things. But DiBenedetto showed this year, after running at the back of the field for much of his career, that he is a legit driver. He is a legitimately competitive driver. And although they weren't up there in the top 2, top 3 competing for wins very often, if at all, very consistent and can make the playoffs in solid equipment. And that's basically what you would ask for out of any free agent. So if he isn't returning to the 21, that's just another name to throw out there into the stable.
Moving on here, Kyle, we have got some news for the upcoming race here at Bristol in the NASCAR Cup Series. Some back marker movement, I guess you could say. JJ Yeley will be in the 15 car, basically dominated by Brennan Poole this season in the driver's seat. And it looks like Poole's out this week and across the board. I don't know what's going on over there with Brennan Poole, but JJ Yeley is in there at the 15 car, and then replacing him in the 27 is Gray Gaulding, a guy that I really love. I thought he was going to be a star in this sport after watching him come through the K&N and ARCA series, and just didn't quite come to fruition for him, but ran second at Daytona in the Xfinity Series earlier this season. And I'm so happy that he's getting a shot here in the Cup Series. At least I know it's not going to be anything close to winning speed or even top 20 speed, but at least he's getting a shot back in the Cup Series. And JJ Yeley moving over to the 15 car, which hasn't been super horrible this season. I mean, it's capitalizing on other people's mistakes in these kinds of equipment. So just, quick thoughts here, Kyle, on just a little bit of movement here and Brennan Poole kind of getting the short end of the stick maybe here.
Yeah, just quickly on it. Brennan Poole's been decent for Premium Motorsports this year. Of course, they're now owned by Rick Ware. Next year will be one of those Rick Ware cars that we know and love so much. But it's been unfortunate because he's been pretty solid in that car all season long. As you mentioned, he's kind of taken advantage of when other people have messed up. He's been in those situations to grab those top 25s when they've been available for those back marker guys. But at the same time, JJ Yeley is somebody that's really stood out this season as really capitalizing even more so in that back marker equipment this season. And it's exciting to see him kind of step up into that 15. Obviously, unfortunate that Poole wasn't able to get any sponsorship or anything for this weekend, and I believe that's the reason he's out. But Yeley steps in.
Yeley had sponsorship, so he had to run.
Exactly, and it's not like they need to worry about a full-time driver to make the playoffs or anything like that anymore if you get a fluke win or something. So, yeah, it's cool to see Yeley back in there. It's always good to see him in the field because he's done some good things this year. We've mentioned him a couple of times in notable finishers. I think he even got a spot in Cush's threes at one point. Done some good stuff in that 27, going over to the 15. And then, as you mentioned, Greg Gaulding, fan favorite. He's done some great things these last couple of seasons in that back marker equipment in the Xfinity Series on those restrictor plate races. Has a couple of top fives in those Panini-sponsored cars, and we'll get to see it again in the Cup Series in the 27. And it's a solid-looking car. Always love it when the trading card companies get in on the sponsorship as well. So it's going to be fun to see those two on the grid. Obviously, unfortunate for Brennan Poole, but just kind of rounding out the field for Bristol.
Yeah, I always remember Greg Gaulding for the Krispy Kreme car that he ran as he was coming up through the car. I mean, Krispy Kreme, how can you not love Krispy Kreme? But Greg Gaulding has been someone that I've kept my eye on for a long time. Unfortunately, he just hasn't had the sponsorship or even the opportunities arise for him. But hopefully he gets a solid run this weekend at Bristol. We'll move on to two tracks here with some optimism in terms of fans. We'll start off with Las Vegas next weekend. They're optimistic about having fans at the track for next weekend. That hasn't been confirmed about how many or if there will be exactly how many fans in attendance for next weekend, but they're optimistic that some fans will be at the track, which basically confirms that Vegas will be on the calendar for next weekend for hopefully preventing any sort of, last minute changes. But Vegas should look to be on the calendar for next weekend for the opening of the round of 12 for the NASCAR Cup Series, and will be across the board in all three series with the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series. So hopefully there's some fans there for next weekend's race. And at Kansas, they have confirmed that there will be fans for their race in the playoffs later on in the round of 8. They're going to keep it to social distancing measures and going to max it at 10K is what they're looking at for right now. But it's still a really good turnout for Kansas and for a Cup Series playoff race. Anytime we've gotten to see fans this season has been a blessing. And, especially at this past or 2 weeks ago at Darlington, you could hear the roar of the crowd after the race. I mean, it was just so good to hear that emotion. And, it's so dry when after the drivers win. There's nothing that goes really with their celebration. But with fans there, that should add to the experience there just a little bit. Any thoughts there, Kyle, or should we just keep the ball rolling here?
Let's just keep it rolling.
All right. We'll go over to the IndyCar side of things here. And as we've talked about a couple of times on this show about, the potential of having a Nashville street circuit race, it has officially been confirmed for 2021. The Music City GP is on for IndyCar next season. And it looks like a great track. It looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. And Nashville, once again, adding its name to the motorsports scene with the championship banquet there being recently added with NASCAR, and now IndyCar getting in there with Roger Penske having his first major move as the owner of IndyCar and getting his say, I guess, in trying to grow the sport in different areas that it hasn't really gone to before, Kyle.
Yeah, very, very exciting to see. Obviously, street circuits are awesome. It's always fun to see those cars flying on city streets and in and around sceneries that we all know and love. And adding Nashville to that is really, really cool. The big thing that stands out to me, though, are the two massive straights that they have there. And the fact that they're going over a bridge.
Yeah.
That's pretty insane. I don't know how they're going to make that work in terms of the logistics and making sure it's safe and everything. But if they can cross everything off on their list there to make sure it's all safe, because, of course, those cars going at major speeds over open water is not safe at all. If they can make it safe and make sure everything's good there and everything's covered, that's going to be really, really cool to see. And the two straights going side by side there across the bridge is going to result in some really, really cool photography, some really, really cool shots. And it's going to look great with the Nashville city skyline in the background.
Yeah, I hope it's a night race, to be honest, so that we get to see just the lights and the neon that, that
Yeah,
Music City has become synonymous with, kind of like a second Vegas. But, I mean, it's going to look great there in Nashville. It always does when there's, any sort of neon. I mean, you can see it right here over my shoulder. I posted the wrong way, but I'm a big fan of the neon, and I hope to see that they go under the lights. But if they don't, I'm still happy that they're adding to the calendar, and Jimmy Johnson's adding another race to his schedule for next season, with that being added to the calendar.
right.
So Jimmy Johnson up to 13 races now for next season with the city, with the street circuit and the road course schedule for IndyCar for next season. So we'll move along here on the final couple points here. One that's kind of come out of nowhere as well. Scott McLaughlin, a guy that is synonymous in the supercar scene down in Australia, is coming over to North America in just a couple weeks' time here to join forces with Roger Penske and run for his team in the season finale at St. Petersburg. He did a NASCAR test back in 2018. There's been some rumors about him maybe coming over to North America for a couple of seasons. And I did a little bit of, watching some clips of him before the show started, and man, he's incredible. The Bathurst,
Yeah,
the lap time there,
Mount
the 203,
Panorama, the record time there is incredible. Man, Scott McLaughlin is one of my favorite drivers, regardless of discipline. This guy is so much fun to watch. He owns supercars. He is so much fun to watch in that series down in Australia.
supercars.
And the fact
nuts.
that those things are so much fun. But the fact that we might be able to see him with regularity here in North America, of course, he was supposed to run a couple IndyCar races this season, specifically the Indianapolis road course. He did some testing, did some preseason testing as well, had some impressive times up in the top 3, top 5 times with his first couple times being in IndyCar. That's some incredible stuff. But the fact that we might be able to see him in IndyCar and NASCAR is pretty incredible, because for forever, of course, he's a Penske driver down in Australia in the Supercar Series. So the thought has always been that if he is going to come to North America, it would still be in that stock car, closed body area and go in the NASCAR route and maybe run a few road courses, or maybe even try and make it a full-time thing, kind of like what Marcus Ambrose did a few years back.
Crazy.
But the fact that he went to IndyCar first and looked impressive there, and of course is going to be running an official race there later on this year, and then who knows what's going to happen going into next season, whether it'll be spot duty for both the Cup Series and IndyCar, or whether it'll be spot duty in IndyCar and maybe running a full-time Xfinity Series before getting prepped for a full-time NASCAR. Like, who knows what the possibilities are, because this guy's talents are immense, and he's going to be a pleasure to watch regardless of the discipline.
I can't believe he's coming this season. I mean, after the current sports the Supercar Series is over, he's basically getting on a plane right after and coming over to run the final race of the IndyCar season, which, maybe lends you to believe that he's setting himself up for something more, more rides for next season, which seems to be the case. I don't know if he's leaving the supercar scene entirely. I didn't know if I saw that or not.
The plan going into this year was that this year was going to be his last in supercars. He was going to run a couple races in IndyCar, but obviously all of that got screwed with COVID, and the schedules didn't work because he still had his full-time commitments in supercars. But I believe I haven't seen anything to say otherwise, that the plan still is for him to come to North America full-time for next season. It's just what series that is hasn't been confirmed yet.
I imagine it would be IndyCar to get his feet wet a little bit, but I mean, IndyCar is shaping up for an incredible 2021 season. I mean, if you have, we talked about it, maybe even Sergio Perez. I mean, a little bit of a link there with McLaren coming over and the Mexican ties and the North American team. Like, it's all that kind of combination there. And then you've got Jimmy Johnson coming into the IndyCar scene for next season. And
Elio Castroneves wants to come back to IndyCar. Like,
everybody wants to be in IndyCar next season, and we could see a bunch of new entries to there.
Yeah.
Team Penske has got his hands full over there. He's got so many drivers that want to drive for him. He doesn't know what to do with himself on both sides of the scene in motorsports. So it's going to be, I mean, it's a lucky man, that guy. The amount of talent that he's got at his dispersal right here is incredible. And IndyCar has kind of always been my third, motorsport behind Formula One and NASCAR, but next season could, maybe top some Formula One races on a consistent enough basis where we could be seeing IndyCar make its name in North America and get more viewership. And if that happens, man, the future
It'll
is bright for
definitely
that
have
sport.
the name value.
Yeah, Scott McLaughlin. Watching those highlights, supercars are absolutely
They're awesome.
insane.
Super underrated.
Like that's kind of what NASCAR wants the cars to look like in a sense, in terms of keeping it more stock. Obviously, without the huge big ass spoiler in the back or the rear wing that kind of Richard Petty made synonymous. But those cars are insane. The amount of speeds that they have and the amount of grit and it's insane to watch. But I'm excited to see how the transition does for him. I imagine it's going to go smoothly since he's not entirely unfamiliar with what he's getting into here. So it'll be a good judge to see how he does at St. Petersburg, Kyle.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting, and I cannot wait to watch this guy because everything that I've seen, obviously, over in Australia, just from highlights and whatever, has been really, really fun, but I'm excited to finally see him live.
Yeah, that's kind of all the news and notes that I've got here, though, Kyle. I know you have some stuff on Le Mans that's coming up here in relatively short period of time, so take it away with those.
Yeah, of course, the 2020 Le Mans not being run at its usual time because of COVID, but it's back on the schedule and coming up this weekend. And this is one of the quintessential races in the sport, in sports world as a whole. Of course, Le Mans is probably the most storied race, right up there alongside the Indy 500 and the Daytona 500, if not exceeding both of those in terms of worldwide, absolutely. And there's some exciting storylines going into this weekend's race. Of course, no Fernando Alonso. He won it last year with that team, but it's really looking like in that LMP1 class, and for the overall victory is coming down to the two Toyota entries, and that's the Mike Conway, Kamui Kobayashi, and Jose Maria Lopez entry that finished second last year, and the entry that Fernando Alonso was a part of last year with Sebastian Kazuki Nakajima, and filling in for Alonso this year because he's out is former Formula One Toro Rosso driver Brendan Hartley. So it's going to be exciting to see those two entries go head-to-head for that LMP1 class to get in a little bit of Canadian flavor in there as well. Running in the Austrian entry with Enzo, you've got Bruno Spangler, the Canadian, running with Tom Dillman and Oliver Webb. So exciting to see a Canadian up there in that LMP1 class, looking to maybe, if the Toyotas have an issue, maybe steal a victory. Who knows? What we'll see there, but some names that are going to be in this Le Mans for coming up this year. Of course, not as many special entries as we would usually see. Of course, last year Scott Dixon got involved. A bunch of different names are always involved, just with COVID and everything. Not quite the superstars being involved this year, but there still are some intriguing names in the LMP1 class, which are the big dogs. Of course, you've got the two teams. There at Toyota, of course, that I mentioned, but Bruno Senna will be back in the LMP1 class. He's the other big name there, running with Rebellion Racing. But the LMP2 class is always the big class, and there's some interesting names there. Of course, we talked about on a recent episode, Juan Pablo Montoya. He's going to be with the American outfit Dragon Speed. Exciting to see him back there in the Le Mans race. You've also got Paul di Resta taking a break from the F1 coverage and getting back in behind the wheel. You've got Canadian Garrett Grist on the LMP2 lineup, Jean-Eric Verne, of course, running Formula E, going over to LMP2. Also from Formula E, Nick De Vries, the reigning F2 champion. He's going to be in the LMP2, as is Antonio Felix da Costa. So a lot of Formula E entries or drivers going in Le Mans this year. But the really exciting one for me in that LMP2 class, it's really, really cool to see. There's an all-female entry featuring Tatiana Calderon, Sophia Florsch, and it's Dutch, so I apologize on the pronunciation, but Betsky Visker, I believe it is. But seeing an all-female entry, it's something that you don't see all that often in motorsports, so really, really cool on that front as well. So lots of really cool storylines going into Le Mans this year, but the big dogs, Toyota, in that LMP1 class, they're going to look to dominate again. But it's going to be what entry comes out on top. And I'm excited to see how things play out over the 19th and 20th coming up this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, endurance racing is something I've kind of gotten into a bit more over the past year, especially with the release of the movie Ford versus Ferrari. I mean, how could you not love that movie if you love cars or anything like that? So just the storyline behind that battle, I know it's not the same as what it used to be in terms of manufacturer battle and, having to build the same car. It's, it's pretty similar in terms of specs now. But, I mean, those things are incredible. The amount of focus it takes to consistently drive for 24 hours. Obviously, they have shifts and everything like that. But it's a grind, and whoever wins it fully deserves it. And I can't wait because Le Mans, I've watched it the past couple of years, and it's better than Daytona for the Rolex 24 just because of the track itself. It's like in the countryside in France. Like it's literally not even a track really. It's just kind of roads and everything put together. So I'm excited to see how the race turns out this weekend. I'll definitely tune into that with the lack of motorsports this weekend, just NASCAR scene. And it's a perfect weekend to have it without any rivals in terms of the races. So I'm excited to see who comes out on top. Toyota, obviously the favorite, like you said. So we'll talk about that next week during the show. Just give a kind of a roundup in terms of what happened throughout the race. Obviously, 24 hours is a lot.
I was going to say, we're not talking about all 24 hours.
We'll just get to the main stuff in case any of the Toyotas or any big names that are expected to run up front have any problems. But going to be an exciting story to watch there. So with that, Kyle, I don't really have anything else to say in terms of notes, but we get on to another portion of the show here, the final portion of this week's show with the Bristol Fantasy Preview. Obviously something that we do on a weekly basis here at the Green Flag, and the past couple of weekends have not gone Kyle's way, to say the least. Obviously Darlington's still stuck in his mind in terms of that, but Richmond last weekend, the bet of taking Jimmy Johnson instead of Kyle Busch did not pay off after having Jimmy Johnson's issues early on and Kyle having a solid day from coming from the back. So Kyle looks to start off fresh here a little bit in terms of Bristol and hoping to get his redemption this weekend and improve to 3-8 on the overall record. So, I mean, Bristol, my favorite race of the season right here, my favorite track by far. Obviously, I've gone there in 2014, so I've got some emotional connection there too. So I feel like I've got a pretty good grasp on this track in terms of history and stuff, but it's Bristol, so it's anything can happen at this track, and I'm excited to see what you've got and what I know. I'm still undecided right now on one spot as we talk, so I'm kind of waiting to see what you have to try and I've given myself some options here to go in terms of if I think I can outpoint you here, but we'll start off. Do you want to go first this week just to spice things up? Sure,
I'll go first.
All right.
What I will say is that I am coming out guns a-blazing. I will say that. I am not feeling this back-to-back losses. I lost too many off the start here. I got that winning taste, and I'm not going back to losing a bunch in a row. The comeback begins with Bristol, and we'll begin with who do I want to begin with? Let's start with Brad Keselowski. Of course, He's been fantastic on the 750 horsepower tracks. Stole a victory at Bristol earlier this year when Elliott, Hamlin, and Logano all had issues racing in the lead. He stole that victory, but we've seen over the course of the season that two team is legit on the 750 horsepower tracks. I think that they kind of take that momentum from last week, bring it back out this time out. And even though he doesn't have the average finish over these last 10 that some of the other guys in my lineup do, I am feeling pretty confident about Penske as a whole, but specifically Brad Keselowski going into this weekend. So he's my number one entry for my Bristol fantasy team. Let's go.
Man. Okay. Keselowski's someone I have on the edge right now. I'm not fully decided on him yet, so I won't confirm him right now. I'll go with a guy that I'm going to go with for sure, and that's Kyle Busch. I'm starting off 3 weeks in a row here to start the playoffs with Kyle in my lineup because this is his best round by far, and if he's going to win this season, his best shot is this weekend at Bristol to try and continue his streak of consecutive seasons with a win. And how could you not put Kyle Busch in your lineup this weekend? He's the best among active drivers at Bristol with 8 wins. His average career finish is 13.13, 13 top fives and 30 starts. And this stat is incredible. 2,433 laps led. Nearly like no one even comes close to him in that regard. I mean, the amount of times this guy has been snake bitten at this track is crazy, and he has 8 wins. So I think Kyle Busch is going to be one to be reckoned with. He had a good, strong run in the spring and had a top 5 there. Obviously, the finish there, finishing 4th behind Keselowski, Johnson, and Boyer with that late incident there with Elliott and Logano, like you mentioned. So that kind of spiced things up a little bit there. But I like Kyle. He's got a decent starting spot in 9th. I think that he comes to the forefront, and along with that, we've got the trucks and Xfinity races this weekend to add to rubber to get the high line going, and I think that's one of his strengths is to get both lines going for his car. So if they nail the setup here, Adam Stevens back atop the box for him this weekend, I think that he could be someone that is definitely in contention for the win this weekend. So I imagine after you saving him last week at Richmond, I think he's going to be in your lineup this weekend, but I guessed that wrong last time. So what do you got for this week with Kyle Busch?
Of course I have Kyle Busch in my lineup. Come on, it's Bristol. This is the place that he owns. Like, Kyle Busch at Bristol, like, there really isn't any kind of driver track combo that you really think of more in NASCAR right now that's a good point. Like, it's basically number one in terms of driver dominance. It's got to be Kyle Busch at Bristol, and we saw it this year. Despite his struggles, still finished 4th, as you mentioned, in the spring race, and almost went out there and won the All-Star race earlier this year as well when they ran under the lights. Just wasn't able to quite get that top line going and run down Chase Elliott. So I have full confidence in Kyle Busch going into this weekend, which means that he's going to go out and wreck in stage 1 and finish with 1 point on the day. But
don't say that. Don't say that. Don't say that. I don't need that right now. Please.
Kyle Busch has my full confidence into this weekend. Good starting position. He'll get the stage points. He'll get the finish. He's got to be in your lineup. And I made the mistake last week of trying to outthink you and try and go with maybe a different lineup. And then you ended up matching 5 out of my 6 and easily taking the victory after Jimmy Johnson's early issues. But that being said, I will not make the same mistake. Kyle Busch is definitely in my lineup this time around.
And he's not safe this weekend going in there. I think it's a risk versus reward weekend for Kyle Busch. Even if he doesn't win this weekend, have to bring the car home in one piece, get it to the finish, have a solid top 10. That's all he needs this weekend, and he should be fine to advance. I don't need any incidents on lap 1 like he's traditionally done in the past year over the past couple of seasons. I look back at 2018 and obviously that wreck car that he drove with the bumper knocked off of it. But I think I looked at that because that was a similar package to what we're racing this time, and that was underneath the lights, unlike the spring race. So I like Kyle Busch this weekend, like I said. And my next guy on my list is someone I think that you're going to have as well. That's Chase Elliott. He's been exceptional here at Bristol in his short career, has an average finish of 12.67. And he was the All-Star winner here back in July, 3 top 5s in 9 starts, 287 laps led. So I expect Chase Elliott to be really strong here back in 2018. He had a really good run as well. So I look to at Chase Elliott to be definitely in contention for the win this weekend. I know the truck race just finished as well. And
yes,
someone that we discussed earlier, we'll get to it right now, Sam Mayer wins the truck series race. There's no point in putting it off.
Is he not the top prospect outside of the Cup Series right now?
I don't think so, but he's
he's
incredible right now. This kid
just went out and won at Bristol, which is not an easy track. I don't know if it's his first time there. It's definitely his first time in the truck series at this place. Chandler Smith with a solid 6th place finish, but it's Sam Mayer once again going out and showing up the field. That's some impressive stuff, if I do say so myself. Also, Tanner Gray in 3rd, Parker Kligerman in 4th, Trevor Bayne in 5th. Some pretty interesting finishes there.
Ross Chastain in 9th there for Nissan as well. So.
I got to say, my hot take earlier of Sam Mayer immediately pays off because he goes out and wins in that 24 truck.
Impressive. Yeah, I mean, Nissan Motorsports, obviously that 24 car has had some pretty good success. Truck, excuse me. I was going to correct myself. You didn't need it. Yeah, obviously Chase Elliott won in that truck earlier this season at Charlotte. So GMS is definitely the truck organization to beat right now in that series because Kyle Busch Motorsports has taken a step back this season over the past 2 seasons, I'd say as well. And GMS has really emerged as that forefront, even above Thor this season as well. I think the 5 trucks that they put on a weekly basis has been incredible. And Sam Mayer is pumped up right now as I'm watching it on the screen. He deservedly so. Good job on the kids. So we'll discuss it maybe a little bit more at length next weekend or after the weekend here. But our initial thoughts here: Sam Mayer wins the Truck Series race at Bristol. But I've got Chase Elliott. I'm imagining you have the same thing.
Yeah, jumping back into things, obviously Sam Mayer, awesome for him and awesome for GMS. But getting back in the swing of things, speaking of that 24 truck, one of its drivers, Chase Elliott. How about that for a transition back into things? Yes, I also have Chase Elliott in my lineup, and I think that you've got to be overthinking things if you don't. He's looked superb at this track. Should have won the spring race, won the All-Star race. He's been excellent here in his young career, as you mentioned. I don't think that changes going into this race. I'd expect another strong performance from him here at Bristol. If he doesn't go out and win, definitely top 5 at the very least.
Yeah, that's definitely the bar I'm looking at for Chase Elliott. After a strong Richmond where I didn't see that coming, I go to a Bristol track where he thinks he's really great at, and I think he's really great at. So I think that's a consensus pick across the board for a lot of people in fantasy upcoming on Saturday night. My third guy this week, it's Joey Logano. I'm staying in the Penske stable here, or not staying in the Penske stable, but I'm going over to the other guy in the Penske stable for right now. I'm still undecided as we speak, but Joey Logano, an average finish over the last 7 races of 10.14, 3 top 5s, 316 laps led. I'm going with the 2 guys that wrecked each other in the spring. I think they look for redemption here in the under the lights here at Bristol, and Logano's been on quite the decent stretch here at Darlington. Obviously that 3rd place finish. Then this past weekend he looks solid once again at Richmond. So I look at Logano to be strong this weekend. And before I pick Logano this weekend, and now he screws up. But I had him last weekend, so hopefully he does me well this weekend. Do you have Logano in your lineup, or are you going a little bit differently than me here?
Well, I said earlier when I picked Brad Keselowski for my team that I liked Penske this weekend, and that doesn't change with Joey Logano. I also have him in my lineup. I'm feeling Penske this weekend. They've always looked strong at the short tracks, and Keselowski, I'm expecting a big weekend on that 750 package. Joey Logano was right up there at Richmond with him, and Logano has even better numbers than Keselowski recently at Bristol. Of course, was up there, as you mentioned, at the finish with Chase Elliott. They wrecked each other, and that's what opened the seas for Brad Keselowski to go out and get that victory earlier this season. So I'm expecting all 3 of those guys who are at the finish in the spring race to be in contention once again. So I do have Joey Logano in my lineup. All
right. So that's 4 of your 6 completed.
Yes.
I'll go with Clint Bowyer as my next guy this weekend. I picked him last week at Richmond. Didn't quite come to fruition in terms of the points that I was hoping for.
28.
Yeah. Didn't get the top 5 points, though, what I was looking at. I expected him to be up there kind of in the top 5-ish, but kind of was stuck in the later, 10s and early teens there. But I expect Clint Bowyer to be pretty strong this weekend. He's got an average finish over the last 7 races. It's the best among active drivers in 7.29, 6 top 10s in that stretch, and 144 laps led. So I think Clint Bowyer is going to be solid this weekend, and he needs to be in order to continue his playoff journey. And I think he kind of gets that done. I look for Clint Bowyer to just bring the car home in one piece and try and just keep a consistent night, get some stage points, and get a good solid finish inside the top 10. So, and that's all you really need at Bristol. I mean, a lot of guys come and go throughout the race in terms of, if it's issues mechanically, wrecks, or if it's a pit road problem or whatever. But I look at Bowyer to be pretty strong this weekend. So that's my 4th pick so far. So who's your 5th pick for Bristol this weekend?
Number 5 for me. Well, I've said the entire time that I like Penske this weekend. It's a guy that's had bad luck.
He's going for it.
He's had bad luck at Bristol, despite having some of the most laps led out of these recent races. Actually, let me pull this up here. So over the last 10 Bristol races, Ryan Blaney, who is in my lineup, has 439 laps led despite only having 1 top 5 finish. That ranks him 4th out of drivers over that same span. Number 1 is Kyle Busch, of course, followed by Kyle Larson and Joey Logano. It's Ryan Blaney there in 4th. He doesn't have the finishes to show for it, but I don't care. He's going in my lineup. It's a scenario where he needs to go out and win. Penske is going to be behind him. I can guarantee that. He is superb at this track, but has had some terrible luck getting caught up in other people's wrecks. I think that changes this weekend. He has a big performance. I don't know if he goes out and gets the win. I'm not sure about that yet, but I like him a little too much at this track to not use him at this track. So I got to put Ryan Blaney in my lineup, which means I have all 3 Penske cars in my fantasy team.
Oh, man, you're not making this easy on me.
No, I'm not.
I have Blaney on the edge as well with Keselowski, okay? I'm so tentative to put all 3 Penske guys in the lineup. I feel like if I put all 3, one of them is bound to have an issue kind of thing. And you look at Blaney and, like, he'd be the obvious one to go to based off of his bad luck here at this track. But at the same time, he's going to go for broke. But is that too much in the end? Is he going to overstep? Is he going to just make a mistake that could cost him a chance at getting a solid finish? So I'll save those for my last. I'm still undecided here, man. I'm still going to wait here. I'll go with the guy that I'm for sure going to have in my lineup, and that is Kurt Busch. I'm playing it a bit safer on this one, but I think Kurt Busch, given his track record, has been really, really good here in his career. And Chip Ganassi usually brings a strong piece to the Bristol night race, whether that's the 42 or the 1 car. And Kurt Busch is obviously has great success here in the past. 6 wins, an average finish of 14th, 12 top 5s in 39 starts, 1,095 laps led. I can't really argue against Kurt Busch this weekend. I'm looking similarly to Clint Bowyer here. I'm trying to keep the big names a little bit off the board here and trying to save them for the 1.5 miles where maybe I could take more advantage of their usage. So I'm looking at Kurt Busch and Clint Bowyer this weekend. I imagine you don't have Kurt Busch this weekend, but I'm going to go with the 2 Busch brothers this weekend.
I do not have Kurt Busch in my lineup. For my last pick, there was quite a few names that I was trying to decide between. Do I go with my boy, Matt DiBenedetto, despite some of the recent issues that Wood Brothers team has had and the lack of speed and the fact that they completely missed on the setup at Bristol earlier this year and looked good at the All-Star race early on, but then had some issues getting into the wall and weren't able to recover from that? Do I look at Austin Dillon and the magical run that they've been on the last couple races and toss him in the lineup? But at the end of the day, I need to go out and guarantee myself a win. So I had to load up my Bristol lineup. And in doing so, I had to go out and pick Denny Hamlin as my final pick here. Of course, earlier this year in that spring race, the crazy finish that it was, he was leading that race, ended up wrecking as Elliott and Logano caught up to him, and then Elliott and Logano wreck after that. He's kind of the forgotten one in that. He was leading much of that race. You look back to last year, he won at Bristol the second race last year, finished in 5th the first race last year, had some issues in some races previous to that, but every single year he's had at least 1 top 5 finish at Bristol since 2015. I don't think that streak, I do think that streak continues this season. Didn't pick one up earlier in spring, finishing 17th after the issues after wrecking. I think he goes out and has another big day. Of course, was the one to spoil Matt DiBenedetto's party last year as he ran him down after Benedetto ran into Ryan Newman. So I have Denny Hamlin in my lineup, which means I have the superstar lineup of Ryan Blaney, Brad Keselowski, Kyle Busch, Denny Hamlin, Joey Logano, and Chase Elliott. I need the win this week if I have any chance of catching up to you, so I'm going all out at Bristol.
Damn. It sucks. I guess that Hamlin usage you saved at Darlington is where you're coming in handy here.
Yes, it is.
Man, shoot. Okay. I've already locked and loaded on Bowyer and Busch, so this is terrible. I'm not picking Hamlin, that's for sure. I need to save him for later.
Yeah.
So I was looking at 3 guys here, but based off your lineup, I'm going to have to go bigger than what I was looking at for my 3rd guy. But I was looking at Keselowski, Blaney, and Johnson for this final pick.
Okay.
Johnson, obviously, there's usually one non-playoff guy that gets up in the mix here. I was looking at Eric Jones
Johnson's
too.
a good bet.
But Johnson's pretty good here over his career, which is surprising because I don't consider him the greatest at Bristol, but he's got solid numbers. Average finish in his career of 13th, which is better than I would have really predicted. 2 wins only, 13 top fives and 37 starts, 914 laps led for the guy in the 48 who is celebrating his 45th birthday today. So happy birthday to Jimmy Johnson. But man, I feel like I have to match you here on one of these two.
Okay.
Of Keselowski or Blaney, because if one of them screws up, then we both mess up. So, oh man, do I go with the safe bet? Because I love Keselowski on pole, but do I like Keselowski later more in the season? Oh my God. Shoot.
I'm bringing the full court press on this week.
This is ridiculous. Oh, man. I was looking at Kevin Harvick as well, but I decided to keep him for the 1.5 miles. But, man, dude, this sucks. Shoot. Okay. I'm going with – oh, shoot. I can't even say it. I can't even say it. I'm looking at my screen so hard right now. I'm looking at Keselowski and Blaney's numbers, and they're just too equal for me to decide here. I feel like Keselowski's – I don't know. I don't like guys to go back-to-back weeks in terms of wins.
Okay.
Like, I don't like – but he's on pole. Like, he could win the first stage. Like,
that's a big 10 points.
I know, and Blaney's having a – you know what? I'm going to go with Keselowski. I'm going to go safer.
He's going Keselowski.
Because Blaney, I don't want him to come up through the pack, and he's just going to cause his own mistakes. I'd rather keep it conservative. Brad can go out there and play some strategy if there's a caution late in the stage and stay out and maybe try and get a playoff point or something like that for the next round since he's locked in. So Blaney's going to have to go for broke, and I'm going to take him for bonus picks in terms of stages and stuff maybe.
Okay.
Just to kind of cover my ass on that end. But so I've got in as my lineup for this weekend, Kyle Busch, Chase Elliott, Joey Logano, Clint Bowyer, Brad Keselowski, and Kurt Busch. I'm going with the guys that I put out on the cars here. I went with the luck that has brought me so far. So I'm going to stick with that, and I'm hoping that continues here this weekend. Very up in the air. I think you've got a great shot this weekend with Denny Hamlin as that X factor.
Well, I had a great shot until 20 laps to go at Darlington as well. So that's
salty. Guy is salty still.
Well, think about it, because I saved that Hamlin usage, and if that was the case, and I pick up that win, and I saved that Hamlin usage, then I busted out here at Bristol. Guns a-blazing, of course, for this strategy, then I could be looking at going up 2-1 here in the playoffs and maybe making a late season surge to maybe come back and tie you in wins over the season. Maybe come
all right. Let's settle down here. Let's settle down.
But today, that means that Saturday night it comes down to Clint Bowyer and Kurt Busch versus Ryan Blaney and Denny Hamlin, and I can very easily see a scenario where both Blaney and Hamlin wreck, get into somebody else's issues or cause them themselves, or even wreck each other in some kind of scenario. And your safer, more conservative picks, guys who always get to the finish, and Bowyer and Busch maybe get it through and get the points for you. But I'm banking on some stage points and banking on some good finishes. And I'm hoping if I go superstar lineup, even if one has an issue, I still got 5 in there to get me some big points. So I need a big result. I'm bringing it out here at Bristol.
Essentially, Hamlin got me 40 points at Darlington, and then when you didn't use them. So you're looking at trying to get above that this weekend in order for that usage to essentially pay off. If you win the week as well, that's a win as well. But that's kind of the target for Hamlin this weekend. I mean, 40 points is a win with no stage points. So, I mean, that's entirely possible. It's definitely capable for Denny Hamlin after a terrible week last week at Richmond. He could bounce back this week easily. So, oh, brother, this is going to be stressful on Saturday night.
It's going to be good.
Not only is it because of the playoff cutoff race for the round of 16, but it is this fantasy preview. So I think before we round off here, Kyle, we kind of have to make our predictions going into the race.
Yes, we do.
For Saturday night on who we think A is going to win the race, and B, who are the 4 guys knocked out in the first round of this year's playoffs. So we can go back and forth here on kind of on what we think here, but let's just do the winner picks first. Since you went first for fantasy, I'll go first for this one this time. I'm going to put it out into the universe. It's going to be, I'm putting positive vibes out there once again. I'm going with Chase Elliott. I'm not going to say Kyle just so I don't jinx it or something stupid. I'm going to go with Chase Elliott this weekend after that strong weekend at Richmond. I think after the All-Star race, that's obviously a huge piece of momentum for him to come into this race, as that's the most recent time at the track and relatively close in heat. I mean, the setup or anything really wasn't changed in terms of the car for either race. So it's just going to be whether the top line gets more worked in. Obviously, over 500 laps, you imagine it would be the case. But I'm going with Chase Elliott for the Bristol night race this year. So who have you got winning the Bristol race?
I'm going with a very ballsy pick.
Ryan Blaney.
I'm going with Ryan Blaney in a virtual must-win situation. He's been
You better not do that to me this weekend.
He's been so caught by bad luck at this track. He's led so many laps and somehow has just the one top 5 finish over these last 10 at the very least. I think he breaks that trend. He goes out, maybe plays it a little bit conservative the first couple stages, maybe stays out of some trouble that he's been caught up in earlier on. And that being said, he also needs to maybe pick up some stage points. But I think that he's going to be there in the conversation at the end. I think he breaks through and gets the win and completely shakes up this playoff bubble. He goes out and wins at Bristol and punches his ticket to the round of 12.
All right. So you have a guy below the cutoff line advancing here. So, oh man, I think we both would like that to happen for our brackets to stay somewhat intact here. But yeah, that's a good shout. Blaney has traditionally run really well at the early parts of the race. He's going to have to come from 16th with over 500 laps at Bristol. That's very easy to make up. Just has to have the setup underneath the car, and Penske usually does. So for your sake, for your fantasy lineup, and for the sake of our brackets, let's hope Ryan Blaney has a good night on Saturday night. And that would just add to the entertainment of having a guy in a must-win situation at the front near the end of the race, and what kind of risk will he be willing to take to advance to the next round of the playoffs, because points is going to be an outside look for Blaney and DiBenedetto going into this weekend. So there you have it. Chase Elliott and Ryan Blaney, the two young guns, the two best friends here, are going to end up in victory lane for both of us here. And we'll see who's right and who's wrong, and if we're both wrong, which probably is entirely possible. But going to be fun nonetheless. So we'll get on to the final part of the show here today, the playoff bubble trouble. Who do you have as your first elimination? Obviously, Ryan Blaney is your guy that you have outside the playoff cut line coming into this race. I'll just give a quick picture of what it kind of looks like going into to Bristol. We've got, obviously, like I said, Kyle Busch plus 18 in 9th, Eric Almirola plus 7, along with Kurt Busch plus 7 in 10th and 11th. Clint Boyer being the outside of the first guy on the inside of the cutoff line with plus 3. William Byron, the first guy out at minus 3. Cole Custer minus 8 and 14th. 15th is Matt DiBenedetto with minus 25, and Ryan Blaney with minus 27. So that kind of gives you the rundown in terms of the guys who are in trouble maybe coming into this race in terms of points and who could fall out on points. Obviously, Alex Bowman there at plus 27 and Chase Elliott plus 28. They're not entirely safe, but they're in a good enough position if they get a solid finish that they'll be fine. Austin Dillon, the big shocker of the first round so far, plus 36 in 6th place. So he's basically on to the next round for himself. It's going to be going to take quite the catastrophic failure for him to miss out on the next round. But those are kind of the big guys that we kind of looked at coming into this round of who were going to be on the bubble. Obviously, you had that wild pick of Ryan Blaney maybe coming out in this round, but you didn't quite go with it. Maybe you should have stuck to your guns. But with this prediction of winning the race, you're kind of seeing otherwise here. But who's your first guy that's going to be out of the round of 16 and not going to have a shot at the championship this season?
Well, it pains me to say it because I really thought that this round with a couple of races maybe shaped up for him to sneak his way through. But after the struggles at Darlington and the expected struggles at Richmond, this team has just kind of had no momentum whatsoever these last month and a half, even 2 months. It's the Wood Brothers 21 in as Matt DiBenedetto is my first guy out. They just haven't had any positive momentum here recently. Started the season so strong, looked really, really solid early on. We're consistently in the top 12 conversation. We're pretty much locked inside the top 12 in points. But these last couple months have just steadily seen their performance decline, even at tracks that DiBenedetto has been strong at, whether you look at road courses, whether you look at Darlington and the 2 top 10s that he'd had there previously. Just nothing from this team recently. I don't see that changing at Bristol, even though I would love to see him up in the top 5 conversation. I really just don't see it happening just with the performance of this team recently. So DiBenedetto is my first guy out.
Yeah, I have the similar thinking there. I'm going to have DiBenedetto falling below Blaney here. That's why I think Blaney will outscore DiBenedetto this weekend. So I'm going to have DiBenedetto as essentially the first guy out this weekend at Bristol. I don't think it's going to be for lack of effort, though. I think he's going to give it his all. Obviously, he finished second there last season in the fall race or in the Bristol night race in August. So we'll see if there's something to be said there in terms of past success there in competitive equipment. Had a good all-star showing as well earlier this season. We'll see if that transfers over, but I think it's just a bit too much to ask DiBenedetto to go out there and score his first career win in a must-win race, essentially. And even if it's not the case where he can point his way in, that's still going to be quite the tall task. So I have Matt DiBenedetto out in round 1 as well. Similar to, I guess you had him out. You had him advancing in your initial playoff bracket here, but you see otherwise here. So moving on here, who is your second guy you see out in the round of 16?
My second guy in terms of points will be Cole Custer. He looked solid in the spring race at Bristol, of course, was decent again in the All-Star race, got caught in a wreck in that spring race. I just don't see it happening for Cole Custer this time out. He's -8 to the cutoff line, which is doable, but I really don't see him finishing 8 points better than any of Clint Bowyer or even more than that, needing more points to finish ahead of Eric Almirola or Kurt Busch, anything like that. So I just don't see it happening for Cole Custer this year. Obviously, fantastic to pick up the win in Kentucky. Fantastic to be the only rookie in the playoffs this year. It's definitely momentum to build on for next year, but I don't see round of 12 for him this time around.
I agree. I think Cole Custer, his rookie season's been incredible. Obviously getting the win the first time a rookie's won since 2007. So it's been a long time coming for that stat to renew itself. And I think it's been, a successful playoff so far. It's not like he's the guy at minus 27 coming in here. He's done a solid job, -8 to his teammate in Clint Bowyer. And I think that's the best case scenario for Cole Custer, like we talked about earlier this week on the show. I think it's just a bit too tall of an ask for him to go out there and outpoint Bowyer on one of his better tracks as well, or even Kurt Busch this weekend as well. So I have Cole Custer just missing out on the playoffs as well this weekend. I think Blaney will get up there close to the cutoff line for points if he keeps it clean. But I also have Cole Custer out in the round of 16 to keep that prediction of those two going out as we talked about a couple weeks ago. I'm going to keep that consistent here. So I'll just get it off the board here with Ryan Blaney for myself. I think he's going to miss out as well. I think when people are in desperate times, requires desperate measures. And I think this is just going to result in just a bit, maybe one mistake that'll cost Blaney from moving on to the next round. Obviously, it would be quite the story if he is able to move on, whether that's points or the win. I just don't see it happening. It's just too much to ask. I think Blaney's been a top 5 car this season in terms of speed. He's had bad luck. He should have had more race wins than what he does, and that would play huge in terms of the playoff points. If that 10-point penalty wasn't there, I'd maybe see Blaney outpointing Bowyer or Almirola or someone like that by 17 points. I could see that, but that extra 10 points right there, that's the worst case scenario for Blaney at Darlington there. And I think this is just too much of an ask for Blaney to come out. So I've got Blaney, DiBenedetto, and Custer as my 3. Who is your third guy you have missing out on the round of 12?
Number 3. Let's go with a bit of a hot take here. My third guy will be Eric Almirola. I thought that he would make it through as we kind of did our previews for the playoffs, but I was expecting a little bit more in these first couple races from Almirola, maybe picking up some stage points, maybe picking up some better finishes so that you had more of a buffer than +7. But Bristol's just been such a brutal track for him over these last 10 races. Has the one top 10, which came in his first race at Bristol with Stuart Haas, finishing 6th. But since then, 31st, 37th, 29th, and 29th, getting caught up in a lot of accidents, just a lot of bad luck, but even previous to that, some poor finishes as well. And you need a big turnaround because if you look at some of the other guys around that cutoff line, they're all guys who are good at this track. So just given Clint Bowyer, even William Byron has pretty solid history at Bristol. So I believe that Eric Almirola will be one of those to fall out and not make the round of 12.
Okay. I didn't think that you were going to do that because I'm doing that. I have Eric Almirola also missing out on the round of 12. If it wasn't Bristol, I'd say he'd have a pretty good shot here to move on. But when I'm looking at the guys below him, I think Busch and Bowyer basically outscore him easily this weekend.
Yes.
And Byron just needs to outscore him. I guess that's by 10 points, right?
Yes.
So it'll be tough. Like 10 points for Byron against Almirola. It's going to be quite the task for the young driver in the 24 car. But I want to go for a bit of a wild card here. I went pretty safe with my fantasy lineup, but let's go a little wild with the predictions. So I'll go with Almirola missing out, and that means that I have William Byron, Clint Bowyer, Kurt Busch, and Kyle Busch all making it to the round of 12. So who completes your round of 12? Who are the 12 drivers that you see that still have a shot at the championship after this weekend at Bristol?
Well, this final one is really difficult for me because, of course, I have Ryan Blaney winning the race. So that means one of those guys that you have making it in relatively comfortably, with Blaney being one of those guys out by a decent margin. Well, I have one of those guys getting bumped down. And this is a difficult one for me because Clint Bowyer is excellent at Bristol.
Whoa.
William Byron has been pretty solid and has been ramping up. Of course, finished top 10 earlier this year. So this is a difficult choice for me to make. I think that Kurt Busch is in the clear. I think that he's consistent. He's solid at Bristol. He's in your lineup. I think he's going to have a good top 10 finish. He's going to finish relatively comfortably in front of that cutoff line. So it comes down to me between Clint Bowyer and William Byron, and it pains me to do so, but I have William Byron just missing out on the round of 12. Clint Bowyer's just too good, has too much of a track record at Bristol specifically, even though Richmond didn't necessarily go the way we thought it might for Clint Bowyer and really capitalize on that opportunity. Still ran it inside or around the top 10 all day long, still finished right at the tail end of that top 10, was still really solid finish. And that was something that you were disappointed with. So I think at the bare minimum for Clint Bowyer into this weekend, you're looking at a low-end top 10 if things go well for him. You're maybe even looking at another top 5 finish here at Bristol because, of course, he finished, was it runner-up to Brad Keselowski earlier this year?
Yeah.
So, finished second earlier this year. You could very easily see another scenario like that for Clint Bowyer, one of his best tracks here at Bristol. So, any other track, Eric Almirola's through, maybe even William Byron's through. But for me, at Bristol, Blaney wins it. Clint Bowyer has a strong day, who bumps out his teammate Eric Almirola. So that's what it is for me. So just to recap, DiBenedetto, Custer, Byron, and Almirola missed for me.
Yeah. To recap for myself, I've got Blaney, DiBenedetto, Custer, and Eric Almirola. So 2 at SHR, all Fords getting out in the first round here for myself. So that'll be interesting to see. I mean, if Blaney doesn't go out there and win the race, what a points battle we're going to have at that cutoff line. If it's going to be especially close. If it's teammates, whether it's Almirola and Bowyer on opposite side of the cutoff line and they're close to each other at the end of the race, let's say, and then, what kind of teammate orders come into play there, and some tension at the SHR camp maybe after this, because they've got 3 guys right there on that bubble that can feel anything but safe going into this weekend. So the Busch brothers aren't safe by any means either. It is 2020. I'm not entirely comfortable with Kyle Busch yet. Anything can happen at Bristol. He's had some hit or miss.
18 points is a solid buffer.
I know, but if you have that, lap one spin like he's had a couple times over the past couple of seasons, and the damage is worse than what he's had the lucky draw of having, where it's capable of going up there and winning the race sometimes, then you never know. Because with it being almost a green racetrack to an extent, maybe some overnight rain going into Saturday night, who knows? That could rewash the track and then get rid of all the progress into the Xfinity race. There was a rain before the truck race tonight, right? So who knows?
So much so that they couldn't put the traction compound down. So if it continues to rain off and on like that, who knows what that can affect, whether they're even able to get the traction compound down. So there's a lot of different factors going in, whether it's the rubber being laid down or even the traction compound itself. But I feel pretty confident about those top 9 guys in points right now. I feel like plus 18 is a very strong buffer for Kyle Busch. But then again, as you mentioned, if you have an early incident, don't make it past stage 1, don't pick up any stage points, who knows what can happen. And it is Bristol, which makes it a fantastic cutoff race, because if you're looking at a point or two between you making it through and not, we're going to see quite a few bump and runs, to say the least.
I hope so. I want to see some contact after a lackluster all-star race in that regard. I want to see a bit of contact cars here.
We're going to have lap traffic. Let's not let maybe a little bit of a disappointing all-star race make us forget about that incredible spring race and what insanity went on at the end of that race.
I know. I'm not saying that
Let's not get too down in the dumps.
The spring race. I'm just saying the All-Star race, that was the most recent time we were at the at Bristol, and I just want to see a good race. Bristol always has my highest expectations going into it, and when it doesn't meet them, then I'm a bit disappointed. But this is the race I'm looking at, potentially the race of the year candidate if everything goes right. I mean, there's a lot of potentials here in the playoffs for that to be the case with Martinsville, the Roval, Talladega, and this one I think are the 4 best ones. And obviously the championship race is never usually the race of the season, but it's exciting nonetheless. But 5 really solid races here in 8 weeks here to round off the season. I mean, don't discount Texas, Kansas, and Vegas as well. I mean, they can all produce something special too. But it's going to be an exciting weekend. I'm nervous. I'm excited. I'm everything that you can be as a NASCAR fan this weekend. And we'll have you covered here at the Green Flag. So any final thoughts here, Kyle, before we go and finish this episode here, and an exciting week of Bristol racing coming up after already one race is completed?
Yeah, well, what I'll say is that I'm cautiously optimistic about my fantasy lineup. I'm feeling good with that all-star studded lineup that I got going in. Got to hope for some good finishes from some of the big dogs. But that being said, even though my brain made those picks, my heart is still pulling for Matt DiBenedetto. I'm hoping that 21 team turns things around quickly, gives him a potential race-winning car, and we get to see him up at the front, because I was hoping to see him in that top 5 mix a little bit more this season. Wood Brothers team hasn't necessarily had the setups with the no practice, and DiBenedetto maybe just not being as good as some tracks as well, but hoping that they get things right here for Bristol and we get to see a show between Blaney and DiBenedetto, mixing in the top 5 and maybe threatening a win for one of those guys below that cutoff line.
Yeah. The thing is that you got 2 guys there that have a shot of like really winning this race this weekend based on their track record here. I mean, it's all up for grabs.
If you look at the 2019 Bristol races, spring race, most led laps, Ryan Blaney. Fall race, most led laps. The night race, Matt DiBenedetto, and those are the 2 guys.
Did he really lead the most laps that night?
I believe so. I saw the NASCAR graphic said that. It could be wrong, but
I'm shocked. I mean, I know he led the last 100 laps, but I kind of went back in time in terms of my fantasy lineup for 2018. I skipped 2019 just based off of having a different package that I don't know if it necessarily represents what we're going to see here on Saturday night, but you never know. I mean, I could have just totally missed the park on that one. I could have just swung and missed, but I like it.
The 2019 spring race, Ryan Blaney, 158 laps led. That was the most in the race, followed by Joey Logano with 146.
Okay. What about the fall race?
The fall race was definitely DiBenedetto, but let me just double check what those numbers were really quickly. Matt DiBenedetto led because he took over in that last little stint there. He led 93 laps to Brad Keselowski's 91, so just barely.
Oh, okay. It was close. That race was insane based off of how many different leaders there were. I know Eric Jones
there was
up
lot.
There.
Just Logano, looking at the
Elliott. I mean, they were all up there.
The list here, there was a solid 10 guys who led double-digit laps.
Yeah, that was a great race last season, and I hope it's more the same. I don't want to see a dominant driver go out there and lead everything this weekend. I want to see some passing, and hopefully that high line comes in this weekend, as I'm sure over 500 laps it will. So lots of stuff to recap next Monday when we record next. It's going to be, I'm going to allow my emotions to settle on this Sunday, whether it's positive or negative. I'm sure it will be the same for yourself. So it's going to be an exciting week of racing, and we'll have the Le Mans 24. Yes. We'll talk about that next Monday, and we'll also recap the Xfinity race that's going to be happening tomorrow night on Friday, and then the Cup race on Saturday night to cap it all off. So I'm pumped, but I'm cautiously optimistic as well. So I hope it's going to be a great race, Kyle, and this is going to be one for the history books in terms of who could come out on top to advance to the round of 12 this season. So with that, I think that's everything that we needed to say over the past hour and a half of Truck Series races gone by since we started talking. So lots of stuff that we've had to discuss, but we like it that way in terms of bringing it all to you here at the Green Flag. So make sure to go follow us on Instagram there. We'll have our fantasy preview graphic there if you want more of a visual there over the next couple of days before the race on Saturday. And then I'm sure I'll pump out a graphic or something for the Bristol night race, depending on who wins for the page as well. So make sure to go follow us on Instagram at the Green Flag. And with that, Kyle, I think that kind of concludes this week's episode. I've been your host, Lukas Wacker. He has been Kyle Cushman, signing off for now. Enjoy the racing this weekend, and stay safe, everybody.